Jay Prince just sent a message to the entire rap game that nobody saw coming. And it hit different because it came at a moment when everybody thought this situation was already dead and buried. Finesse2tymes is sitting inside one of the most ironclad contracts in the independent rap game right now. And the man holding the keys to that cage, just no amount of money NBA Youngboy is throwing on the table is going to open that door. Not today. Not like this. Behind the loyalty and the brotherhood you see plastered all over social media between Youngboy and Finesse, there is a business war. Jay Prince didn't build Rap-Hode Records into a legacy institution by letting artists walk in and out whenever somebody with deep pockets came knocking. And that's exactly what makes this situation so much more layered than what's showing up on your timeline. The real story behind why Finesse2tymes cannot simply pack his bags and roll with Youngboy, what that contract actually locks him into, and what Jay Prince's response really signals about the power dynamics in this minute industry. We are about to break all of that down with no filter. Minute? Yo, what's good, fam? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we get into the real industry politics, the street dynamics, and the minute behind-the-scenes moves that mainstream media won't sit down and actually explain to you. And today, we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating, minute chess matches happening in hip-hop right now. Jay Prince, Finesse2tymes, and NBA Youngboy all tangled up in a minute situation that is equal parts business, loyalty, and culture. Make sure you stay locked in until the end, because the details on what it would actually take minute to free Finesse from this deal will genuinely surprise you. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into this wild ride, let me keep it with y'all. Minute, people speculating, people taking sides, people acting like they know the full picture when they're really only seeing about % of what's actually going on. We're about to separate the facts from the fiction, the real from the fake, and give you a complete understanding of how we even got here. To understand this situation properly, you have to understand who all three of these men are. Not just as artists or public figures, but as people operating inside a very specific world with very specific codes. Jay Prince is not just a music executive. He is one of the most respected and in certain circles feared figures in the entire history of hip-hop. This is a man who built Rap-A-Lot Records from the ground up in Houston, Texas, at a time when nobody was looking at Houston as a music market. He signed and developed legends. He navigated even his rivals have publicly acknowledged. Finesse2tymes is a Memphis rapper who has been building serious momentum. He's raw, and when NBA Youngboy started showing him love, people understood immediately why the chemistry made sense. Youngboy has always gravitated toward artists who feel real, who feel unpolished in the right way, who carry that energy from the bottom up. But here's where it gets real spicy. Because Finesse2tymes didn't arrive at this moment of buzz without some strings attached. Those strings are wrapped up in a deal with Jay Prince that is far more complicated than... So check it. Let's talk about what Finesse2tymes is actually locked into, because this is the foundation of everything else that's happening in this story. Finesse2tymes is signed to a deal. Now, for y'all who might not be immediately, a standard record deal historically meant a label signed an artist, helped them... Completely different animal. A deal means the label or the management company has a stake in virtually everything the artist generates revenue. We're talking recorded music, yes, but also touring, merchandise, endorsement deals, acting opportunities, brand partnerships, publishing. All of it, the label essentially positions itself as a financial participant in every single income stream that flows to the artist. Now, in the right situation with the right team behind you, a deal can actually work in an artist's favor because it theoretically incentivizes the label to invest more aggressively across all areas of your career, rather than just pushing records. But in a situation where an artist wants to leave, where the relationship has broken down or where another opportunity is pulling them in a different direction, a deal becomes a prison. And that word is not an exaggeration. It is the correct description. The contract that Finesse2tymes is in isn't just a name, a deal in the broad sense. According to what has come to light around this situation, the terms are structured in a way that gives Jay Prince and his commercial level and how any new deal would have to be structured if he were to transition to a different home. That means that even if Youngboy came in with a number that could buy Finesse out, it is not simply a transaction where you write a check and walk away. There are provisions in that deal that would need to be negotiated, clauses that protect the original party's financial interest long after any buyout takes place, and potentially non-compete elements that would complicate any immediate pivot to a new label structure. The real kicker though, Jay Prince is not a man who negotiates from a position of desperation. When you have built the kind of legacy and the kind of financial infrastructure that he has built, you do not need to say yes to any offer that comes to you. You have the luxury of being patient. And patience in a contract dispute is power. Let me break it down for y'all even further. When you sign with somebody of J. Prince's stature, you are not just signing with a label. You are signing with a name, a reputation, a network, and a protection system that operates on levels beyond what a standard music business transaction can capture. And J. Prince is absolutely aware of the value he brings to any artist under his umbrella, which is exactly why he does not feel any urgency to negotiate Finesse2tymes out of an agreement that he views as fair and something Finesse entered into willingly. But here's where it gets real. Because to fully understand why Youngboy is in a position of trying to buy Finesse out of this contract in the first place, you have to go back and understand the road these two traveled to get to where they are now. And that road has some serious potholes. Youngboy and Finesse2tymes were not always in this brotherhood energy you see them displaying publicly. Real talk, these two had genuine friction between them. The beef between NBA Youngboy and it was the kind of energy that in the rap world, given the backgrounds and the affiliations involved, the tension had roots in the layered and complicated dynamics of street politics mixed with rap politics, which if you understand either world even a little bit, is one of the most volatile combinations that when you've got two artists who both carry credibility from the streets, who both have people around them who operate with a certain code, and who it has a gravity to it that pulls everything into it. The specifics of what sparked the initial friction between YB and Finesse got discussed in interviews and in social media posts from people in both camps at the time. There were shots taken, not necessarily the kind you read about in legal documents, but the kind that come through in energy, in the way certain conversations get cut short, in the way certain streets align and realign. In the Memphis to Louisiana pipeline of rap, politics, Finesse, and Youngboy's tension was real enough that people who move in those circles took it seriously. Now, this is where we got to address something that a lot of people skip over when they talk about beefs that end. The ending of a rap beef, especially when it involves men with real street ties, is not simply a handshake and a photo op. The ending of a real beef is a statement. It says something about both parties involved. It says that both men were secure enough in their own position to prioritize something bigger than the friction that existed between them. And that's exactly what happened here. Youngboy and Finesse2tymes squashed whatever was between them. They came back together, and when they did, it wasn't performative. You could see in how they moved and how they showed up for each other publicly that this was a genuine reconnection. Youngboy gravitating toward Finesse and wanting him in his corner wasn't a business calculation. Or at least it wasn't only a business calculation. There was a real appreciation there, a real recognition of what Finesse represents as both an artist and a person. And that is precisely what makes the contract situation so frustrating for Youngboy. Because here he has a man he's now rocking with, a man he wants to invest in and build with. And there's this existing structure that is standing in the way of what could be a very powerful. That frustration is what drove Youngboy to reportedly make moves toward buying Finesse out of his deal. He was approaching it as taking care of somebody who is now in his circle, in the culture that matters enormously. That is the kind of move that builds and reinforces loyalty in ways that nothing else can replicate. Now, let's talk about something that adds another entire layer of complexity to this whole situation. It's the history between NBA Youngboy and J. Prince themselves. Because these two are not starting this negotiation from a neutral place. There is history there, and in the world these men operate in, history shapes everything. J. Prince and NBA Youngboy have had their own tensions that played out in the public sphere. J. Prince, being who he is in the industry and in the culture, has been a figure who has been involved in or adjacent to situations involving Youngboy at different points. The relationship between an OG of J. Prince caliber and a young artist of Youngboy's generation is never simple. There's respect that has to be established and maintained. There are lines that can't be crossed. And there are moments where the business interests of powerful men don't align, which creates the kind of friction that doesn't resolve easily because both parties have too much pride and too much standing to simply fold. The street's been talking about the dynamic between J. Prince and Youngboy for a while now. J. Prince has made public statements at various points that made it clear he is not intimidated by Youngboy's reach or his fan base or the resources around him. That is just not how J. Prince. He's been in rooms with people whose power and whose danger far exceeded what the music industry typically produces. And he has navigated, for J. Prince, the approach Youngboy has taken to try to buy Finesse out of his contract is something that touches on more than just dollars and cents. In the world J. Prince comes from and has operated in for decades, if you come to a man of J. Prince's stature and essentially signal that you want to pull someone out of his camp, you better come correct. You better acknowledge the relationship that already exists and the investment that has already been made. And this is where the public response from J. Prince gets interesting, because J. Prince coming out and responding to the situation publicly rather than simply handling it quietly behind closed doors is itself a message. It's a statement to the industry that he is not going to pretend this isn't happening, and he is not going to allow anyone to create a narrative around this situation that doesn't accurately reflect the terms of the agreement or the respect due to the people who made investments in Finesse2tymes before. The momentum started building in the hood. We know that when a man of J. Prince's stature speaks publicly about a business matter, it is because he is establishing a record. He is putting something on the table that cannot be misrepresented later. He is essentially saying, we all see what's happening here. We all know what was agreed to, and the terms of that agreement are going to be honored. That is a power move. Full stop. The real kicker, though, is what J. Prince's public response tells us about the deeper dynamics at play here beyond just this one situation. Because this isn't only about Finesse2tymes and NBA Youngboy. This is about a principle that J. Prince has built his entire career and reputation on. The sanctity of agreements and the respect that is owed to people who take chances on artists before the world catches on. Let me break it down for y'all in a way that cuts through the surface-level reading of this situation. When Finesse2tymes got his deal, he was not at the level of buzz and momentum he's at now. The deal was struck at a time when J. Prince was making a bet on potential. That's how the music business has always worked at its core. Somebody sees something in an artist before the rest of the world does. They invest resources, relationships, and energy into developing that artist, and the deal reflects the risk that was taken. The expectation is that when the bet pays off, the agreement is honored. Now, NBA Youngboy comes in after the investment has begun to bear fruit and essentially attempts to redirect that fruit somewhere else. From J. Prince's perspective, that is not just a business dispute. That is a challenge to the entire model of how he operates. And Jay, responding to that publicly, is him drawing the line not just for Youngboy, but for anyone in the industry watching this play out. The message is clear. I am not a man whose investments can be outbid away once they start paying off. For y'all who might not understand the cultural weight of what J. Prince represents in this space, let me give you some context. Rap-A-Lot Records and the infrastructure J. Prince built around it has been a force in hip-hop. He has been involved in situations that tested his resolve in ways that go far beyond music business negotiations. He has stood firm, and his reputation is built on an absolute consistency between what he says and what he does. When J. Prince says something publicly about how he operates, there is an unbroken track record behind that statement that gives it weight. Most people in the music, that reputation is also why Finesse2tymes' situation is so complicated. It's not just that the contract terms are difficult. It's that the man holding that contract has both the legal standing and the cultural standing too. Enforce it on terms that are not going to bend simply because someone with a large platform and a passionate fan base wants a different outcome. Now this is, what would it actually take to get Finesse2tymes out of this contract? Because people keep throwing around the idea that Youngboy has enough money to make this happen. And while financial resources matter, this situation is more nuanced than a pure financial transaction. First, let's talk about the numbers dimension, because it is real even if it's not the whole story. A deal buyout is not simply paying back in advance. When you are buying someone out of a deal, you have to account for the projected future earnings across all the revenue streams that the label had a stake in. You're talking about potential touring revenue over the remaining contract period. You're talking about merchandise projections. You're talking about the publishing stake. You're talking about the value of any brand. Deals that might have been pursued under the current structure, all of those projected future revenues have to be calculated, negotiated, and settled. And Finesse is rising, those projections are not going to be conservative. Real talk. When you're dealing with a deal the buyout number can quickly reach a figure that even well-resourced independent artists would. Youngboy is wealthy, but the question of whether the buyout price Junior would actually agree. Two is one that makes financial sense for Youngboy's operation is a real question. Second, and this is crucial, money alone does not resolve this situation because this is not just a business transaction between two parties who have no relationship and no history. This involves J. Prince, which means the manner of the approach, the respect shown in the negotiation, and the way the final arrangement is structured all matter enormously. You cannot simply wire a number to J Prince and expect the matter to be closed. The terms of any resolution need to satisfy J Prince's understanding of what is owed to him. Not just financially, but in terms of how the situation was handled and how his position is acknowledged. Third, and this is the layer most people completely overlook, there is the question of what happens to the deal terms even after a buyout. In many deals, certain clauses survive a buyout. Publishing rights that were already established might not transfer immediately. Revenue sharing on already released projects might continue for a specified period. Any new deal Finesse enters into after the buyout might have restrictions attached. All of these elements have to be negotiated individually, and each one is a potential sticking point. Let that sink in for a minute. Even if Youngboy and J Prince agree on a buyout number tomorrow, the actual process of untangling everything that a deal binds together could take months of legal and business negotiation. And during that entire period, Finesse2tymes is in a limbo state where his ability to move freely in the industry is still constrained. The streets have been watching this situation carefully, and the consensus among people who understand how these deals actually work is that J Prince holds significantly more leverage in this situation than Youngboy does. Not because J Prince is more powerful as a person, but because the legal and two OGs with resources and history. This is ultimately about Finesse2tymes and what this situation means for his career and his trajectory. And that is the dimension of this story that sometimes gets lost in all the back and forth about J Prince and Youngboy. Finesse is in a position that is genuinely difficult. He has a man in Youngboy who clearly rates him, who wants to invest in him, who has a platform and a reach that could significantly accelerate what Finesse is building. That is not a common opportunity. Artists grind for years, trying to get the kind of cosign and the kind of genuine support that Youngboy is apparently willing to extend to Finesse. To have that on the table and not be in a position to fully capitalize on it because of a contractual structure, that is genuinely frustrating. At the same time, Finesse entered into his deal with J Prince for reasons that made sense at the time. The relationship with J Prince carries its own value and its own weight. Being in J Prince's camp provides a certain kind of protection and legitimacy that is not easily replaced. The question for Finesse is how to navigate this in a way that doesn't damage his relationship with J Prince, while also not leaving the opportunity that Youngboy represents completely on the table. That is a tightrope walk, fam. And how Finesse handles himself in this situation, how he communicates, who he publicly aligns with, the statements he does and doesn't make, all of that is going to have long-term implications for his career. Regardless of how the contract situation ultimately resolves, the culture is watching. And in the culture, how you move in complicated moments says more about who you are than anything you could say in a song. At the end of the day, this situation involving J Prince, Finesse2tymes, and NBA, Youngboy isn't just about one contract dispute between three specific people. It is a case study in the power structures that govern the music industry at every level. The way deals are structured to protect initial investors. The way loyalty and street credibility intersect with legal documents. And the way even the most financially powerful artists can find themselves constrained when they're trying to operate inside systems that predate their arrival. J Prince built his empire with an understanding that agreements matter, that the word of a man carries weight, and that respect is not optional. It is the currency that makes everything else function. Whether you agree with how this situation is playing out or not, you have to acknowledge that J Prince is operating entirely within his own established code. He is not doing anything that is inconsistent with who he has always been. Youngboy's move to try to bring Finesse into his world more formally is also completely consistent with who he is. Youngboy has always moved with loyalty at the center of his decisions, often at significant cost to himself. This is a man who has taken losses publicly and privately because of his refusal to compromise on who he stands with. His effort to free Finesse from a deal that limits their ability to build together is a loyalty move. And in the culture that carries real meaning and Finesse2tymes sits in the middle of all of this with his career on the line and powerful men on both sides of a dispute that ultimately only he can fully feel the weight of. The real question is, does J Prince ultimately find a nugget in a structure that works for him, or does this situation become a long-term stalemate that benefits nobody? And more importantly, what does this moment tell us about how we think about artist freedom, business agreements, and the way power moves in hip-hop at the highest levels? The answers to those questions are going to reveal themselves over the coming months. And when they do, you already know where you need to be to get the full breakdown. What are your thoughts on this situation, fam? Do you think Youngboy is going to find a way to make this happen for Finesse? Or is J Prince holding a hand that nobody at the table can beat? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where y'all stand on this one. And tap the video on screen right now for more deep dives into the situations shaping hip-hop culture. We'll see you in the